Welcome to Training Tuesday, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Heidi Reese, and I am the Marketing Program Specialist here at Dayton Superior. Before we get started, I just want to go over a couple of items. I want to remind everyone that you are muted so that the presentation can be conducted without any outside disruptions. However, please feel free to ask us any questions that you may have throughout the presentation. Any comments, you can do so through your chat and or question and answer section of Zoom. And I'll be off to the side, so have some conversations with me if you like. At the end of the presentation, we'll have a mini question and answer chat at the end. So if you want some questions answered then, you can keep them at that time. As a reminder as well, each of the webinars are recorded and placed on our Dayton Superior YouTube channels, as well as DaytonSuperior.com's website. Just search for Training Tuesdays and you can see all of the links for all of the past ones that we've done. So again, another reminder is that anything that we go over in this presentation is intended for training purposes only. For technical specifications or such as technical data sheets, safety data sheets, any application guides, please refer to DaytonSuperior.com and search for the product. You may know Dayton Superior for just one of the many areas which we provide solutions, but did you know that we are the leading provider of engineered solutions and products for the concrete construction industry? As you see on your screen, we deal with accessories, chemicals, forming, but we also bring to the table engineering. We have the largest engineering group in the industry, and we stand behind our products through our training. This training is a very brief overview of bond breakers. And with us today will be Chuck Hogue, and he's going to present this. But if there is something that you want more of, please don't hesitate to contact us at training@DaytonSuperior.com, and we can provide you with more customized for meeting your needs, virtually, come out to you, whatever. Just contact us once again at training@DaytonSuperior.com. Okay, so I let the cat out of the bag. Chuck's here beside me. And he's going to do some intro to bond breakers, or as I like to say, the exciting world of bond breakers, right? It's pretty exciting. Okay, you ready for your intro?
I'm ready.
You want to do it yourself?
No?
Okay. So, Chuck Hogue, our National Training Manager. He's got 49 years of experience in the industry, very prominent figure, and he spent 20 of those years dealing in accessories, forming, and chemical products, notably 29 at Dayton Superior. So that's awesome. He's got very diverse roles throughout the organization, has included product management, sales, has a business and civil engineering degree, and he is uniquely positioned as a subject matter expert because he's been around and he's super smart anyway, right? So he's a go-to for us, and he's going to tell us about some bond breakers. Have at it, Mr. Chuck.
All right, well, thank you, Heidi. So we are going to be talking about bond breakers today. In case you don't know what a bond breaker is, the bond breaker is, we're going to talk about how they're actually used and why they're used. We talk about the projects running through completely from start to beginning. Everything else we do has a solution to it. But if bond breaker isn't done right, you are going to have issues. And that is one of the key factors. It's one of the 7 deadly sins. You don't want to make sure you don't commit this one, because this one will actually set you back. So we're also looking at these topics here. We're going to talk about bond breakers. Material used to prevent adhesion from newly placed fresh poured concrete on an existing concrete substrate. So typically you're going to pour your floor slab, you're going to pour your wall panels on top of it. Well, you want to make sure that those wall panels are going to release. So you use a bond breaker. And that's what the product, like I said, we're not rocket scientists in this business. We're looking at bond breaker is just what it is. It actually is causing that bond between the two substrates to actually basically break or basically shear at that point. So why use a bond breaker? Well, there's a couple of really good reasons. Where you're gonna see it is primarily in tilt. It's one of the big products for our tilt industry. You'll also see it in some precast applications, typically where they want to match cast an existing structure. So bond breakers, typically what we're looking at, you want it to pick the wall panel up and you want it to pick up clean, not to actually pick up any part of the casting bed or any of that other material. So you want the panel to pick up having a nice clean shear and not be stained. So you don't have a whole lot of cleanup on it. You don't want this. This is where panels have stuck. As you can see, we've actually had pit pullouts here on the floor slab. They've come up to with the wall panel. Now that wall panel actually will have to be scraped and or ground down to get it smooth. And then you'll have to patch the floor slab. So there's kind of a dual process here. Whatever happens if something happens with the floor slab, usually you got to fix it on the wall slab, and then you got to fix the floor slab. That is minimal compared to some of the things here that you got with a wall panel that may stick. This is a project here where a panel actually stuck to a floor slab. As you can see, the top part of it is still stuck. The bottom half, actually, that part of the panel actually sheared off when it came picked up. But once again, that panel now has to be replaced. And the biggest problem you have with something like this happening isn't the inserts, it isn't the cost of the bond breakers, it isn't the cost of redoing everything. It's the cost of the crane sitting on the floor on the site, waiting for this one panel to cure so that he can basically erect it and then leave the project. So bond breakers. Typically, you can use bond breakers. You can use bond breaker just as it is, as 2 coats of bond breaker. But typically, you have to make sure the first thing you start when you pour your slab is you have to put a good curing coat down. So you're going to use a good curing for material down on the top of the slab. Once the concrete has cured, you're going to start applying your 2 coats of bond breaker, and those 2 coats typically get put on perpendicular to each other. Now you can also use your bond breaker as a cure coat. The big difference there is bond breaker typically goes on at 400 to 600 square feet per gallon. Bond breaker used as a curing compound has to be used at 200 square feet per gallon. That is an ACI 309 specification. So we try to abide by current standards within the industry. So you're going to want to, why do you want to cure? Well, curing does a lot of things. It actually helps the concrete pad, the permeability or the density of it, the compressive strength of the concrete slab, cracking, dusting, and abrasion resistance. So there are a lot of important things that you have to do with this, and those are this is a phase of the project that you don't want to skimp on. One of the things after you pour your wall panels, you want to make sure you cure the back sides of them. So it's just an extra operation with curing that you need to take care of. So rules of the trade. Bond breaker. When you're talking bond, what about using bond breaker? Well, if you're going to use a curing compound that is water-based, you can use a water-based bond breaker. If you're using a solvent-based curing, you're going to want to use a solvent-based bond breaker. If you're going to use you can also use a water-based bond breaker over a solvent-based curing, but do not, never, ever apply solvent-based bond breaker over a water-based curing compound. So at Dayton Superior, we offer some of the most extensive products here, line within the industry. We have here our SureLift J6WB and Maxi Tilt with dye. They are both a chemically reactive type material, meeting VOC regulation, all VOC regulations here in the US. They resist rain and weather. Fair to really good material for that. If you get a driving rain, you have to actually reapply, but that's typically only if you have like a real downpour, delusion rain coming down or hard rain coming down. And with this product here, you get minimal staining. It is a water-based material. So you can use a resin cure with it. Once again, solvent base, resin cure. You can use a water-based bond breaker. Or you can use a water-based cure and seal. Cure and seals typically are products that aren't used that often anymore in the industry, basically because the cure and seals typically will leave, a lot of times they use an acrylic type material and they'll leave a film on top of the slab, which can transfer to the panel once you pick it. We have our J6D, one of the better products that I grew up using. This is a solvent-based material, can be used as a bond breaker and a cure. And it has to be used at it, once again, applied at 200 square feet per gallon to be used as a curing compound. And it has to be on a hard steel trowel finish.
Hey Chuck, weren't you at that project right there that's showing?
That project, yes, I was. Thank you very much. This project here was basically a North Carolina project here that we did here. You can see this. We actually braced everything to the outside of it. This was a photo probably taken 12 years, 12 years ago, somewhere in that range. But typically this one here, you can see is a multi-story structure. We braced to the outside to make sure the insides were left open. We had casting beds off to the side so that all the panels could be erected and not be in the way of the steel going up on the inside of the building.
Yeah, looks good. Bond breaker was used, right?
Yeah. So bond breaker compatibility with solvent base. The Sure uses a bond breaker as a cure. On most jobs today in the industry right now, what we're seeing is most of the guys are using their bond breaker as a cure. Reason being, one product, they don't have to worry about screwing up the application of it. It's just a matter of having one drum on site. It makes life a whole lot easier for them. They don't have to worry about keeping separate spray cans, etc., on site to get everything to work. Now, one of the other things that we have, one of the newer products that we've got here is our SureLift EX. It is a hot solvent mix material. This material actually, once you spray it out, and this is compatible with no cures or any cure and seal. So basically, you have to use this product as your curing and your bond breaker. It's a very hot solvent material, so basically a lot of the solvents are going to burn off before it actually hits the floor slab. And it basically is used primarily in all of the high specified areas in the country, including all throughout Canada. So this is a product here that we're seeing used primarily. 90% of the West Coast states actually specify this type of a product as along with Canada, but we're also seeing this now being brought into the East Coast because really this product actually gives you a much better finish than any of the other type releases. Now, some of the things that we got to worry about when we pour concrete is actually fly ash replacement. Fly ash was a product that we started getting big here about 5, 7 years ago, actually maybe a little more closer to 10. But what's happened is fly ash was a byproduct from the coal and electric facility, power generating facilities. But because they're all being closed down, fly ash is now becoming more and more difficult to get a hold of. So what we're seeing is that this product here um, is being replaced or phased out of projects here. It was designed to actually help replace some of the cement that's actually being used within this lab, but it also gives the contractor lead credit. Because the fly ash can actually replace up to 25% of the cement that's actually in the concrete slab. So I said it's being phased out. Well, what's being phased in? What is the one type 1L cement? It is a Portland limestone cement. What they're basically doing is it is a blending of the cement, one type 1L or PLC, is a hydraulic cement that contains a higher content of limestone. What they've done is they've taken clinker and actually ground it on down at the ready mix facility and remix that back into the cement. So now you're getting a little bit more limestone within the concrete mix. Now, this is all specified through ASTMC 595, and you're seeing this more often than not. But one of the things that we have noticed within this product is that there are some issues that we're seeing from the job sites, and the job sites are less bleed water. So finishing has to happen a lot quicker. If you're a little slow on it, you're going to end up developing cracks and tears within the skin of the concrete. Low early strength gain. So when they run course on these projects here, if it's early, you're going to find that you're looking at them where you would typically be at 2,000 and 2,500 psi concrete right at the after like 6 hours, 7 hours. That you may not quite be there. You're going to start seeing that as more like a 10-hour, 12-hour type gain, and then it will gain extensively from that point on. Obviously, variable limestone levels. We found this across the country. Poor communication on limestone levels to cause confusion, poor consistency. So it can vary from ready mix company to ready mix company. So some of the things that, we've had people talking about different solutions for these products here. You've got all these observations that we talked about. People are using more and more evaporation retardants. They're using more and more finishing aids. Just so you know, densifiers don't make a difference for the type 1L cement. And obviously curing now becomes a much more important factor. So type 1L cement is basically, is bringing them more of these products here becoming more highly visible on the job sites. Obviously, you got weather that's going to affect all this. Rain. One thing we're going to talk a little bit about recoating if necessary. If it rains out, always double check. If it's cool or damp, make sure that you're using lighter coats so that the bond breaker has the time to evaporate. If it's hot or dry, panel should be poured when, you can, within 7 days of pouring it, because you can actually dry the concrete surface right out with this material. So usually, and then you also have to worry too about bond breaker not actually being built up on the surface enough so that it's going to bead the water or stop the osmotic effect from the wet slab to the dry slab. Some of the things you got to take care of, weather considerations, rain. Clean the slab and then recoat. Don't just recoat. You got to clean the slab up. So you blow it off, broom it off, whatever. A lot of times what'll have to happen is you will have to remove the rebar cage to actually reapply. If you don't, you're going to end up with actually staining within the concrete slab, within the slab itself, because the rebar will actually, the bond breaker will collect on the rebar, drip down, and will actually stain the concrete in the pattern that your rebar cage is in, which doesn't make for an aesthetically pleasing project. Hot and windy increases drying and leaves permeability absorption decrease. So here you want to make sure hot and windy, you take all the considerations that you got pours. It's the coolest time of the year. You have make sure that you have an evaporation retarder you have on place. You may even want to fog the area when you pour so that it's actually cool and damp. Now, some of the job sites, we have too much wall and not enough floor slab. So you've got to make some modifications. So a couple of those things are you can stack cast. Stacking one panel on top of another. This works really well if the panels are the same size. Always make sure on the bottom panel, you want to make sure you cure the top or the back side of that panel. And you also have to make sure anytime you pour a panel, you have to cure the top side of the panel. But with this one here, because you are casting another panel on top of it, you got to consider that your new casting bed. So you want to make sure you have a good hard steel trowel finish, and you want to make sure it's got a good cure, and you actually put a good quality bond breaker in place. One of my nemesis is a rat slab or waste bed. These are typically beds that are cast off to the side where panels can be cast. They're one-time use beds. Typically, you're going to cast the panel and then pick it up and then destroy the waste bed. In other cases, when jobs I've been on, we usually have the rat slabs. We cast the panel and we destroy the rat slab when we pick the panel up. So, because it comes up with the wall panel, that's usually my luck is with these. I've never had much luck doing a rat slab. Primarily, there's a specification from TCA regarding construction of this project here, and there are quite a few little steps that you have to make sure you follow. And here's usually my beds. They usually come up. So my waste bed is up on the wall, halfway up the wall here, and now I got to have a guy climb up on a scissor lift or high lift and actually pry that off so that they can actually clean that wall panel. Bond breakers and curing. Always make sure you have a hard steel trowel finish to start with. You basically then will apply your curing compound, remove all rebar from that. Once you actually put your curing and your bond breaker down, and the bond breaker is going to go in at 2 coats of bond breaker, going in 90-degree, applied in 90-degree fashion. So you're going to apply in one direction, going the first coat, let it dry, come back with the second coat, applying it in a different direction and perpendicular to it. So basically, you want to make sure you get all of the slab covered with bond breaker. And what you want to do is you need to check and evaluate your bond breaker throughout the whole project here. I remember the first time I ran out onto a job site, and the engineer was walking around with me, and I've got a bottle of water in my hand, and I'm sprinkling water on the slab. Well, what I was looking for is that middle section here that says water bead test. If the water beads up on the concrete, you have enough bond breaker in place. But if it doesn't bead up and you get something like this where it looks like it's soaked right in, you don't have enough bond breaker in. Biggest problem with this section right here is the contractor now has to remove that rebar cage to reapply more bond breaker. So we want to make sure that what you're doing is you're going to check before you actually apply, basically start putting your rebar cages in. You are going to make sure your water is beading. So, and I always check this before I put my rebar cage in. I check before I'm going to pour concrete, because those two can change between that, especially if it rains out. So you may have a slight change there. One thing you want to take into consideration with bond breakers is they break down in sunlight. So painting of the facility or the structure is not the responsibility of the dealer or the the general contractor. It is the responsibility of the painting contractor to actually check the wall panel to make sure it's ready to accept. Because if there's bond breaker on there, the bond breaker is still going to do what bond breaker does. It's going to break the bond from the paint to the wall panel. So typically I always recommend doing a test pattern off on the backside of the building, just to make sure that enough of the bond breaker has dissipated from the sunlight. Bond breaker selection. Key factors here. VOC requirements are going to determine. Always make sure you use a good quality bond breaker. It's one product you don't want to skimp on. So I always recommend using a reputable manufacturer of this product, and do not intermix brands, especially if you're using a separate curing compound with bond breakers. Stick with the same product lines. You may have to have multiple treatments. You will have to have a new chafing sprayer or another pump up sprayer on site to apply this material, or a power sprayer. Just, it is worth it to have every time you, especially if you're using a pump up sprayer, have a couple of them on site just to make it easier for you. So a summary for bond breakers. Bond breaker, one of the simplest things in the world. You must know what you are going to apply. How often is it justifiable? It's all, every time, 9 times out of 10, and if there's a problem on a job site, people blame the bond breaker. Bond breaker is one of the smallest things on the project, but it's also one of the most crucial. So if you have a question, go to our DaytonSuperior.com and go to guide to tilt up bond breakers. And that is a great little guideline written by one of our senior engineers, Todd Fraker. It is a excellent read for it, especially for how to apply bond breakers. Now, at Dayton Superior, I mentioned earlier, you can go to Dayton Superior, but you can get a lot of different information here on our website. We've got product pages set up here. We've got technical data sheets, safety data sheets, our guide to bond breakers, use and application guides, and handbook and specification assistance for you. If you need help with any of this, feel free to put in a request here, and we will get you the help you need for that product line. We've also got available our Superior Tilt engineering team for basically designing all your handbooks, but they're also very good with the application and use of bond breakers. And if you need to talk to your sales guy, we've got that online too. Here's an interactive map that will actually break down whether you are Simon's Forms or Dayton Superior. This map here, you can click on your territory, and you can actually get the salesman's name and phone number and how to get a hold of them right there online. Now, being this is October, we are in the tilt month because the TCA show is happening this week in Phoenix. We will actually be having one of our own Holly Juergens will be presenting on type 1L cement at the show. So if you're out at the show, make sure you sign up for and register for that seminar. She is a wealth of knowledge in this topic, and she is a pure pleasure to listen to on stage. Now, also, as we have for this month, is our Superior Deal of the Month. And for that, we've got tilt-related products, obviously. We got Bearcat bolts. Both are standard in our multi-use. The roof nailer, panel base anchors. We've got plate dowels, Superior wall finish, and we've got some of our bond breaker also listed, all set up for that. We've also got select sizes of our T110 tilt-up system. And once again, our water-based system, oh, and the solvent-based is also on here too. So we've got all of the bond breakers typically are listed on the Superior Deal of the Month. So contact your Dayton Superior rep or get a hold of everybody at DaytonSuperior.com to get that information.
And let me just talk about a little bit. I didn't put it on the screen for you, Chuck. So Holly's information to talk about tilt-up chemicals and their usage with type 1L cement. It's going to happen on October the 11th from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., but that's Mountain Standard Time. So it's over lunch at the show, and she will be talking about how type 1L cement changes the timing and finishes, among other great things. Chuck kind of hit on it a little bit, and she's going to keep on going with it. So in case you were interested, get on the TCA website and you can register for that.
Thank you.
That's all right, Charles. Wait, I said your real name.
All right. Well, if you have any questions, I want to thank you for joining us today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat functionality right now. And remember, if you need assistance for anything, get a hold of us at training@DaytonSuperior.com. If you're looking for tilt-up assistance, we've got a Superior Tilt at DaytonSuperior.com also.
Just to remind everyone that these are recorded. People that usually post it is they're actually traveling to the TCO show. So give us a little bit of extra time. So we'll have it tomorrow morning. And you can get out there and look at it. Any questions? All right, I don't see any. We had a comment. Thank you, Mr. Gregg. I appreciate you letting me know about that. And everyone else online, if you have a question, go ahead and email Chuck and myself at training@DaytonSuperior.com. And everyone have a fine Tuesday, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. PHX.